friends. This is Jesse Juarez, president of the Rotary Club of sunny Seaside, California. You're watching a presentation which was recorded live at one of our club meetings. Seaside Rotary meets twice a month via Zoom. Our meetings feature dynamic presentations by many of the movers and shakers that make Monterey County such a vibrant and hardworking community. If you'd like to join a meeting or learn more about Rotary and the work that we do, you can reach out to Seaside Rotary Club at gmail.com. Again, that's Seaside Rotary Club at gmail.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel for more dynamic content.
There we go. And I'm now going to be muting all the attendees. And then I'd like to give a brief introduction to our esteemed guest speaker here. This is just information that I pulled from the CSUMB website, Stephen. Mr. Stephen Goings. Stephen began as an intern at the Personal Growth and Counseling Center in 2016 and is now counselor as well as a coordinator of the campus affiliate of the National Coalition Building Institute, an international nonprofit leadership training organization that works to eliminate prejudice and intolerance of any kind and builds communities in which people feel that they belong. His responsibilities include providing programming to support CSUMB students involved in diversity/multicultural work and to increase multicultural awareness and cultural competence in student-directed programs on the CSUMB campus. Stephen is also tasked with expanding the collaboration between the PGC and Office of Inclusive Excellence, Otter Cross Cultural Center, Title IX Office, and other culturally specific organizations. Stephen is also known by his spiritual name, Quasar, and is a values-driven person who organizes his life around three primary personal mission statements that speak to his commitment to community contribution and the beauty of diversity, to inspire people to realize their own unique calling to contribute to humanity and experience fulfillment, to support people in recognizing the beauty in difference, and to break down the barriers between belief systems and support people in finding their personal paths to healing, wholeness, and spirit. Stephen, I hope I did you some justice there. I'd like to give the floor to our esteemed guest speaker, Mr. Stephen Goings. Welcome.
Well, thank you. So that was half my speech that I was going to do. You might hear some of that again. I am a soon-to-be licensed clinical social worker, so wish me good luck and good vibes and God bless and all of that. June 23rd is the date of my exam. If I don't pass it, I will be taking it in the next 90 days, but hopefully we can get it done with one shot. Some of my, since you did mention the diversity work, I'll start with some of my social identities. I am now 57-year-old, Black, gay, bigender, Jesus-centered, omni-faith man. I use they, them, and their pronouns, but I will accept he, him, and his. For those of you in the academy, you know, we've been supporting non-binary people with that type of languages for people who don't fit into the strict binary categories. So I'm basically, I wasn't exactly sure because I've never spoken to a Rotary Club. I wasn't exactly sure what to do. So I thought, well, Rotary, community service, that maybe I would just tell you a little bit about my journey on the path of community service. So you'll learn way more about me than you ever wanted to know. Basically, like many community activists, I think my road to activism was paved by personal experiences of pain and mistreatment, which is certainly not my whole story, but it's an important part of the story. The most difficult challenge that I had in my late teens and early 20s was reconciling my deep spirituality with my homosexuality in the context of being a young Black man living in Seaside in the 70s and the 80s, in which the two dominant institutions in the Black community, the military and the church, were both deeply homophobic institutions. I ultimately ended up moving to San Francisco in 1988, explicitly searching for a community in which I could be both gay and spiritual. I eventually found two communities. One was the Radical Fairies, a gay subculture that believes that there is a natural and spiritual purpose for LGBT people in the world. And the other was a gay omni-faith church called Radiant Light Ministries, whose purpose was to empower people to actualize their spiritual potential and contribute to their communities. Now, it's important to remember that this was going on during the height of the AIDS crisis in one of the most impacted communities in the world. And it's not unusual for folk to turn to their traditional faith communities when faced with their own mortality. Unfortunately, for far too many gay men with AIDS, they were turned away from their family churches, mosques, and synagogues in their hour of greatest need. So the development of new queer affirming spiritualities was absolutely essential to the surviving of the AIDS crisis for many in the 1990s. I myself got HIV/AIDS in 1990, and by 2002, I had married two life partners, countless friends and acquaintances, and developed a substance addiction that would take me another 4 years to completely kick. And this December, I will have been drug-free for 15 years. So I'm looking forward to that 15-year anniversary. By 2006, I had started college at CH1B at the age of 43, finally realizing that unlike most of my contemporaries, I had survived HIV and would have to invest in building a life and a career about 20 years late. So if you kind of think about this, when I got HIV in 1990, I was 27 years old, and it was understood to be an absolute death sentence. The prognosis at that time was 18 months. 3 years was like, wow. And 5 years was like, you're a miracle. How did you possibly do it? So there was no conversation about living to the millennium. So I really kind of went through much of my adult life with this horizon of 3 years. That was about as far as I could see into the future. So it didn't make sense for me, or at least at the time, it didn't seem to make sense for me to get insurance or to invest in a career. I did what you would do if you heard that you had 6 months to live. Eat, drink, and be merry, right? Have as much fun as you could possibly do. Except that I managed to do that for 15 years. So that was a pretty good long run of having a blast. But eventually I realized that I was surviving the disease and that I would have to actually build a life. And at CH1B, I found my inner activist. By the time I graduated magna cum laude in 2010, I was a member of the Auto Christian Fellowship and Black Students United. And I had founded 3 different student clubs during my time as a student. The first was called The Gathering, and that was a multicultural interfaith discussion group. The second was Out and About, an LGBT club that spun out of The Gathering. We would actually do gatherings that were specific to particular issues or particular communities, and particularly focusing on our most stigmatized communities. So we had a gay gathering, and the purpose of that was to create a club out of it. We had an atheist gathering, we had a Muslim gathering, and this is all around my belief in kind of just trying to increase tolerance and communication and relationship with people from all types of different groups, and always starting with whomever seems to be the most stigmatized at that particular time. And then the third was the Student Peace Alliance. And out of that, and there's a national Peace Alliance. And so my role as president and founder of the Student Peace Alliance really took me into relationship with lots of community members, so that by the time I graduated from CHUMB, I was asked by Helen Rucker to join the local NAACP. And I had been asked by the late, great Joyce Vanderveer to join the Monterey Peace and Justice Center, which I did. I even spent a year as their president. So I got very involved in those particular activist centers, the peace community and the Black community. And then let's see. And during that time, I also joined AmeriCorps, where I served for 4 years at CHUMB's Service Learning Institute, and as a co-leader of our AmeriCorps cohort. And it was my job to radically improve volunteerism on the campus, which I did by developing the Purposeful Service Opportunities Program, which included a listing of community volunteer opportunities for students, the development of the annual Cesar Chavez Purposeful Service Challenge, which was a competition between our various student organizations and sororities and fraternities that connected the Martin Luther King to the Cesar Chavez holiday. So that whole period, that became a season of service, if you will, that competition between the Martin Luther King Jr. and the Cesar Chavez holiday. And we would have these grand service awards at the end of the semester. And I also helped to develop the Campus Catalyst Volunteer Center. My final year with AmeriCorps was as an administrator for the Monterey County chapter of the National Coalition Building Institute. I want to name drop here. I'm hoping a few of you might recognize the name Diane Kunke. She was a president of the Rotary Rotaract Club at CHUMB, and so when I told her I was doing this, she wanted to make sure that I said hi to all of you from her as former president of that. Also in the chat, for those of you, I'm serving now as the membership chair for the Monterey NAACP organization. So first I will ask you to kindly raise your hands if you are currently a member of the local NAACP. So I'd like to see hands raised of people who are members. Okay, so it looks like we got about half, maybe 4 or 5. So I'm going to really suggest, now you know this is the oldest and boldest and largest, greatest civil rights organization in the country that has done so much for this nation in terms of making real a lot of the stuff that we have said on paper. So if you are not a member of our organization, and I do want you to know that I've been involved with the branch for about 10 years, and it is undergoing, under the leadership of Yvonne Thomas, I feel like it is undergoing a renaissance.
Hey, Stephen, this is Tina. So when I first came out here, I joined you guys, but I never got any meeting invites, so I never renewed. But your president knows that. So I'm still waiting for a new application because she said that's not going to happen in the future under her leadership. So
no, it's not.
Yeah, because you guys still call me and leave phone messages to donate money. So all the time.
Can I have your, would you mind putting your email address in the chat for me?
Sure, no problem.
Okay, great. Anyway, so that was my little diversion for a moment. I wanted to do those 2 plugs. So please join our organization if you haven't already done so. And I want to say that the foundation for the Purposeful Service Opportunities program that I ran was that old Radiant Light mission statement about developing spiritual potential and contributing to our communities. Did I even mention that? I think I mentioned that. So I would take students, essentially, through a process of developing, however temporarily, but of developing their own purpose and life statement. And those are the ones that Jess already read to you. So I'm going to repeat them. The first was the original one that I have, and again, taking this in the context, of a gay man seeking spiritual belonging at the time. So my first one was my purpose in life to break down the barriers between belief systems. Now notice that's not breaking down belief systems. That's breaking down the barriers between belief systems. In other words, any belief that you have that is keeping you from seeing the humanity of another person. So it's not about a belief, it's about whether the belief is keeping you from seeing the humanity in another person. That's what I mean when I talk about the breaking down the barriers between belief systems. So for instance, one of the biggest, most successful events that I did as an undergrad was a gay Christian summit. And some people came in thinking, oh, this was about changing people's behavior or changing people's beliefs. And it was about neither. That I can live in a world where people don't have to approve of my lifestyle. I don't have to approve of what sometimes I might think are limiting beliefs on another person. But if that's all that I see in that person, then that's going to keep me from having a relationship with that human being as full as it can. So it's about the barrier. So breaking down the barriers between belief systems and supporting people in finding their personal paths to healing, wholeness, and spirit. The second, similar to Radiant Light, was to inspire people to realize their own unique calling to contribute to humanity and experience fulfillment. And the third and most recent is my purpose in life is to support people in challenging their prejudices and seeking the beauty in difference. And so I hope that you can see, even in this presentation, I have figured out a way how to be about my purpose in life. I always do it, and this is what I would do for students. So if they want to volunteer for something, any organization that they volunteer for is going to have their own mission statement, is going to know why they want volunteers. So my question for volunteers were, why are you choosing this particular volunteer opportunity? How does it fit into the you that you say you want to be in life, and to create the changes that you want to have in the world? Provided that the volunteer opportunity that you're picking up enhances that in some sort of way, then that's a great fit for you. And obviously, you're not going to do anything that that opposes your own values. So it really getting students to think in terms of their values and how things fit into their lives, so they can make really more very concise, targeted decisions about where they're going to expend their energy. And then I want to show you. I'm going to share my screen for a moment, and I'm almost done. Let's see.
Perfect.
And I want to just share with you, not that you're going to necessarily do this, but I'll send it to Jess and he can send it out to you if you like it. But I wanted to give you the idea about how I would have them create this purpose in life statement. They would start with, and often I would do a whole sheet of 10 things you most want to be, do, or have. But you write down something that you want to be, something you want to do, something you want to have. So just beginning to think in terms of what is it that I care about, that I say that I'm about. Step 2 was to determine an issue or community that you most care about. Maybe that's homelessness, and maybe the community is foster youth. Then determine how you would like to help with that issue or that community. Well, I'd like to volunteer at a homeless shelter, or I'd like to help foster youth apply to college. And then determine how you want people to feel when you're done. And this is so important when it comes to volunteer work. And particularly if you're doing volunteering when it has to do with communities. If I do some volunteer work for someone, I'm helping them to get some sort of provision or some sort of service, and I'm a jerk in my doing it, and they feel disempowered, then that's not purposeful service. Then I'm just doing some sort of volunteer thing to tick off some sort of, it's kind of coming from a place of obligation or a place of better than, as opposed to a place of service. So how they feel at the end of the day really matters. And then put it all together by replacing the words in the parentheses. So my purpose in life is to help someone to accomplish something, and for the community I'm serving to experience something wonderful. In this case, my purpose in life, an example would be, my purpose in life is to motivate high school students to apply for college and become happy and successful adults. So, and then I would have students create their own purpose in life statement. So the last few things that I'll say, I just want to kind of bring things up into present time, some of the stuff that I'm been doing most recently. I think in 2012, I started a chapter of the NAACP on our college chapter on our campus that lasted until about 2018. And the primary reason that it folded was because Black membership at enrollment at CH1B took a tank dive in about 2016, something like that. I think we're down to 3%. So that really disturbs me. I'm a founding member of the Monterey Peninsula Pride that came out as a result of the Pulse Street massacre. And I've served as president of that organization, and I also ran the Interfaith Welcome for that organization. I also started a few years ago the Historically Black Church Tour, so that students at CH1B, Black students in particular, who many are coming to CH1B having left communities in which they experienced themselves as a majority, because the California's K through 12 system is the most resegregated in the nation. So that's an important context, and Black church is so important in our community. So getting people to know what are the local churches that we have here. I serve on the President's Committee on Equity and Inclusion. I run the Harambe African Heritage Men's Support Group, started originally by Mel Mason when he was a counselor out at CH1B. Recently, the NCBI Welcoming Diversity trainings that I do, Caroline Haskell and I just recently did one for all of KION, so for their anchors and staff members. So that was really important because you think of the importance of the news media in terms of how they're framing things for particular communities. And right now I'm also, I serve on the Super Saturday Community Committee to increase Black enrollment at CH1B. I'm advisor on the Center for Black Student Success. And I am the editor and founder of the Black Folks Calendar, which is meant to connect CH1B to local Black communities. So I think I'll leave it there. Those are the things that I'm most recently involved in. And I'm also now supporting the development of a white anti-racist employee affinity group at CH1B, because I kind of feel that because of in a world that is becoming increasingly more multicultural, white people are sometimes feeling that they're being left out of that, as though I don't know how many times I've heard at CHUB students, white students, who feel that they don't have a culture. They feel like Blacks and Hispanics and everyone else have culture but them, as though they're the generic, which they aren't. And so for white people to see themselves as another group at the table, as opposed to the white people on one side and all the multicultural people on the other side, and for them to have their own work to do in terms of dismantling racism. Yeah, so that's it. That's my presentation. That's who I am. That's what I care about.
Fantastic. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for that. And I think I speak for all of us in saying congratulations on your continued health and your continued sobriety. Just the journey that you described, you certainly traveled through a lot, and we salute you and the hard work that you continue to do. So thank you for that. We do have some questions here in the chat box window. Actually, normally I would try to read the first question, but in this case, because I put in the first questions, I would instead like to give the first question to my colleague, Dr. Betty Lusk. Stephen, what can we do in the community as a service organization to support the students at CSUMB as they return to in-person in the fall?
Honestly, I don't know is the simple answer. And I was concerned. I am on the lowest totem pole at CSUMB, so I am not a decision maker at all. Sometimes it looks like that because of how active I am. But the first thing that I would say is it's going to be very complicated. People returning to us, we don't even know exactly how it's going to look. So first of all, the president is very bullish with the vaccinations. So he's feeling very confident, and says that as far as enrolled students, I think he wants to have at least 50% capacity. So we think that there'll be 50% of students back on campus, and some of them will be actually on the physical campus. Some will be hybrid, and some will be some will still be doing teleeducation. I know that as a counselor, I won't be back next semester at all. I'll still be doing teletherapy. So the biggest question I think for the university right now is I don't think that they're anywhere near figuring out what they're going to do about the relationship with community partners. Because when it comes to being on the campus, there's going to be a requirement for everyone to be vaccinated, but that's going to be a different, but it's also an open campus. So how they're going to manage risk management around community members, community organizations coming on the campus, and how we are going to present to community organizations, I think is still an open question that is being figured out. But as soon as that sort of thing is up, I would say the best people to be in contact with about supporting CHUMB that way would be the Service Learning Institute and probably Student Affairs.
And one of the questions that came from me here in the chat box window, how has from your point of view, how has the impact of COVID affected the struggles among CSUMB students and their mental health?
Well, it's been very challenging for some and better for others. So I think probably the biggest division, the biggest internal division is extroverts and introverts. So as you can imagine, some of our introverts are having some relief in not having as many obligations as they have. People who are extroverts are going absolutely nuts. So that's the broadest picture. The other really has a lot to do with what their environment is like at home and whether or not that really supports. So a great deal of mental health is related to the person in the environment. So if you are in an environment where you're the oldest, you're the only college-age student, and your parents are gone at work, but your siblings are at home, and you're trying to help them with schoolwork and your own schoolwork, well, that can be very difficult. Then there are students who were in, dysfunctional or perhaps even violent or otherwise unsafe households that they may have had to return to. Some portion of our students, part of the college can be escaping the households that they're in. So there, those considerations, the considerations of students who might have been in domestic violence kind of challenging circumstances. So all of that is back on board. Then there are the students who have lost people to COVID, and people who have lost, there's the great the great disappointment in the past couple of years of not being able to go to their graduations. I think that we are only on the cusp, because I think that this however long the actual pandemic lasts, I think that we're just on the cusp of what it's going to have meant for children to have spent 2 or 3 years outside of the regular school system, and that's going to follow them up into when they get to college.
No, no doubt. I would imagine that the effects of the pandemic are going to be lingering with many students for a very long time to come, whether they realize it or not. Same as many adults as well. Knock on wood that we're able to get the vaccines out, and that we're able to address some of those mental health issues in the future. And looks like we only have time for about one more question. Regarding service purpose that you mentioned, the form that students fill out to kind of navigate what they would like to support. What are students most interested in supporting right now?
Well, I'm no longer that job was, I don't know how many years ago. 2014 is when that ended for me. So I don't have my ear to the ground in the way that I did in terms of what student or community or service stuff that they're doing.
No worries, no worries. I think one of the first questions, and this is just a general question, your point of view regarding CSUMB. Where do you see CSUMB's place in the community in the next 10, 20 years?
Well, I hope, all I can say is what I hope. I would like us to have a much bigger presence in the community. And the best thing, and I'll plug someone who isn't here, but the best thing that has happened to CHUMB in the last 4 or 5 years has been hiring of Brian Corpeting, who's our Vice President of Inclusive Excellence. And when he first got to the campus, I immediately reached out to him and brought him around to much of the Black community. But this is his orientation anyway. And so I see CHUMB as finally, and I don't mean the students, because CHUMB has always had service learning. So there's a difference between sending service learning students out into the community. But what I would like to see is more staff and faculty showing up at community events on the Monterey Peninsula, and being involved in community organizations, and particularly as a Black person in this area where our community was hit the hardest. All communities were hit by the closing of Fort Ord, but no community was hit demographically as hard as the Black community. We really have octogenarians who are holding up about half a dozen organizations who have been leading these organizations, since the 60s. And the new professional class from higher education needs to be taking their place in the community and not just on the campus. Because the thriving of our students have to do with belonging, and the belonging can't just come from the campus. It has to come from their relationship to the community at large.
Absolutely. Well, as goes without saying that CSUMB and its affiliates have been a strong presence in the community for many years now, and we look forward to seeing that place grow for years to come. So looks like we're just about out of questions here. I wanted to go ahead and open the floor if any of our attendees here would like to unmute themselves and have one last question.
Hi, it's Tina again, and Steve. This is reaching out to the I'm forgetting all the things, the LGBTQ plus community. For several years, the law enforcement has asked to be invited that we could march in uniform, and because of the fear and stuff in the community, we haven't done that. Do you know if there's going to be any changes this year? And I say that, and you were at those meetings, and I was deeply hurt by the organization because I've fought for all those rights for years in LA, where I came from, because I came out when officers started coming out early on in my career. So do you know if there's the community's talked about that at all?
I don't know if anything has changed there. I was disheartened to see, on a Facebook page, a community member not moving in that direction. And in fact, moving even further in the other direction, which was disheartening, because I had said at the time that I would, I would like there eventually um, um, uh, for officers to be able to march in the parade. But our feeling at that particular time was that there were so many people who are just triggered by police, and that may and it, and to be fair, it was a similar feeling for some. I approached it the same way that, as I said, I did the interfaith welcomes, and same sort of thing. There are many members of the LGBT community who felt harmed by organized religion, but nevertheless, they're members of us who are spiritual. So same sort of thing. There are people who are LGBT and who are law enforcement officers. Um, so I always think that the more engagement you can have, the closer you get to solving some of those fears on the parts of people who have been mistreated. And it's unfortunate. I understand how you feel that way, and that's an unfortunate thing. But I understand why the organization did what it did. But in order for that to be fixed, there has to be more relationship with the police for rank and file LGBT people not to be so frightened.
No, thank you for that. I really appreciate that question, and the certainly a difficult subject, an ongoing subject, and I personally hope that this is something that I can see a resolution to in my lifetime. As clearly, Stephen, as you put it, Tina, as you put it, clearly there are communities in which there is an overlap. There's an overlap of people who might be a part of or support the LGBTQ plus community. They're the same, likewise with law enforcement. And I hope that one day we might be able to see a chance for members of law enforcement to be able to openly openly be a part of a community like that, whether it's participation in parades or outreach. But understandably, there are still parts of that of the LGBTQ plus community that feel uncomfortable with that. Like I said, I hope that we can see a positive resolution sometime in our lifetimes. With that being said, to respect the time, it is currently 12:54, and I'm going to go ahead and end the screen share function here, but not before saying, Stephen, thank you. Thank you so much for coming here today, sharing your story for both of our clubs. The work that you've done is absolutely outstanding. Your story is very inspiring to hear everything that you've gone through, that you've experienced, and that you will look to impart on the next generation. So thank you for your hard work, and thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording function, not the screen share function. Sorry.